Well,
what are we trying to accomplish?
I don't know. This is your show.
Oh, I forgot. It's been so long. Let's talk about the AEW television program. Can we do that real briefly?
I don't know about briefly, but we could definitely do that.
Well, this was the one for May the 10th. It was their pay-per-view quality program that we were promised, where they just crammed all the action they possibly could in. And so we were treated to a no holds barred anything goes girls match right before the no holds barred anything goes guys match. Okay, at the start, they wanted to jam all the action they could in this thing. So this show started out with no entrances, no introductions. They opened up in the ring and they rang the bell for Claudio Castagnoli against Felix. And the ADD assisted stipulation on this match was that the winner will get a shot at the other guy's championship. Claudio is the Ring of Honor World Champion, and Felix is one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, and whoever wins, if Felix won, he'd get a shot at Claudio's title, and if Claudio won, he could pick a partner and get a shot at the tag team title. And my question to you, Brian Last, is why would either of them want that?
I don't know. There's no good reason. I don't know.
Because if Claudio's the world champion, why does he want to be a world tag team champion? And honestly, if the tag team titles mean anything, if you're a world tag team champion, you're already a world champion. Bobby Eaton got NWA world title shots at Ric Flair, but not while we were the world champions. Was odd. And plus this whole thing is they're champions of another company that the hardcore fans know is all owned now by the same people. But for the average, again, if any average person tried to watch this program, they'd go, well, what's Ring of Honor? I thought this was AEW. What's going on here? What were you going to say?
I was going to say part of the problem, too, is whatever was going on there. Again, show-long problem was really bad during the main event. You have a commentating team that can't explain anything. That just laugh at each other, telling jokes. Shivani just yells out superlatives whenever he can. That's part of the problem. You need
loud noises.
You need explanation on that show, and it has to be from someone who can communicate. It can't just be from someone talking like this, and then his little friend is just happy to be there, and then sometimes you forget Taz is even there. And then eventually he jumps in.
I think Taz is trying mostly to stay under the radar and not get any on him. But okay, so both guys are champions of another company going for a title match of another company against each other when they already have titles in another company. And Claudio is fantastic. And he made this better than most Felix matches, but he shouldn't be out there doing synchronized tumbling with a guy a foot shorter than him to begin with. And if every American didn't think that they were Mexican, then Felix's shit would stand out more because he does it better than most. But since you just see so much of the spinningness and acrobaticness, it's all meaningless. But here's the thing with Claudio, he's so strong and he's such a good worker. I would make him the second heel to a real strong top heel. Because the only thing Claudio doesn't have is a strong promo. So put him in the main event mix. And I'm not talking about partners. I'm talking about the loose alliances like that the heels in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling used to have. When they would all come out for the show closing interview and they all had their own belt or their own issue, but they were all main event fucking pricks that stuck together, right? And make him the second heel to a real strong top heel. They're friends. They're not always partners. It puts him in the top mix, gives him credibility, have him get singles wins. Don't give him the big ball where promos are essential. But God, he could be such an asset to a roster. And he's the fucking third guy in his own group of flunkies. So anyway, I zoned out on a lot of this, but Claudio finally won with a powerbomb. And as I made note, he's the Ring of Honor World Champion, and he's presented as the number 3 guy in his own group. So there we go. Your thoughts?
It was all right. I disagree with you about Claudio. I just think Claudio, I think people in the business like him a lot more than, I don't know. He's just, to me, he's so bland. And, I can only see the giant swing so many times. And I'm sorry, unless you're Billy Robinson, the European uppercut sucks. It looks like shit. It looks like complete shit.
Or Dory Funk Jr.
His sucked too after a while. Let's be very honest. He got very slow, and you could see him talking to the guy while he was doing it. It was almost like he gave up. It was like, I lost the NWA title. Now I'm just going to go through the motions for the next 50 years.
All right.
I think that, Claudio's, to me, I think he's okay. And a lot of it's just the way he's been booked since he left the Kings of Wrestling, or since he got to the main roster, and since he got to AEW. He is that second or third guy in the background. There's been nothing that's been done or that he's done to break away from that. And he wrestles fine matches.
And that's what you want. You want a guy with that level of strength and that level of working ability to be in the periphery of a fucking top heel, because he can do whatever. And sometimes he might drop a fall instead of your main guy, or he might interfere, make the difference or whatever. But nobody's presented Claudio with attention on him and trying to negate his weaknesses and put people around him to fucking bring the entertainment level up. Anyway, speaking of bringing the entertainment level up, Miro walked into Tony Khan's office on this television program.
I popped. I absolutely popped. As soon as I saw his cankles, I knew who it was. And I was like, oh, please, please. Yes, it's Miro. And then we never saw him again for the rest of the night.
I was about to say, he walked into Tony Khan's office, and that was it. He walked into and closed the door, and that was it.
If you watch that reality show, you know that Tony's not in his office. He's sitting by the monitor. He's sitting in Gorilla.
Well, then, I guess Miro was taking a shit in Tony's bathroom while he had the chance.
Was Miro still in there when Thunder Rosa showed up? Was it like, I'm going to go confront Miro, what are you doing here?
Now, don't start any rumors.
I'm not starting any rumors. I'm asking you a question.
Miro's a happily married man.
That was not even close to any rumor that I was starting. You're starting that rumor.
You talk about Thunder Rosa going in there and closing the door behind her, and we don't know what was going on in there. What else am I supposed to believe you're insinuating, kind sir?
Did she not, in fact, later on in the program, walk up to Tony Khan's door, walk in the room, and close the door?
Well,
did we see Miro leave? Did we see Miro leave the room?
We never saw Miro leave.
Did we see Tony enter or leave?
Next time, if we see Thunder Rosa, if she's walking bow-legged, we'll know something's up.
See, no, that's not what we're saying, and that's not what we're going to know is up, and that's not what we're alluding to. We're alluding to the fact that people are arriving and showing up for the first time in a long time on AEW TV, and they're seemingly hanging out in Tony Khan's office.
They certainly are, and if any of them come out bow-legged, well, Miro's been mad at God, so... Anyway, then they did packages on all four of the pillars. MJF and Darby and Jungle Jack and Sammy, our friend Sammy. And MJF's was first. And of course, he compared the pillars to the Beatles, and he ended up being Paul, the most talented one.
Yeah, let me stop you right there. I'm a big Beatles nut, and I love Paul McCartney, but what a great heat line that is.
Yeah.
Paul, because he's the one with all the talent. Oh, yeah. What a great line.
And who, Brooding Darby was George, right, or whatever. But
no, Jungle Boy was George, I think, and Darby was John Lennon.
That's right. Darby was John Lennon, and that's actually
and Sammy's Ringo.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, these packages, especially this one, good editing and good material. And MJF went over the names, the list of names that he's beaten: Cody Rhodes and CM Punk.
Well, that's the big one.
Blah, blah, blah.
That may be the biggest mention of CM Punk since everything at All Out.
Well, and also it was nice that he got a fucking fall over Cody that he could mention also, because the position Cody's in now elsewhere. But again, this was a good package. And then we started going into the Bizarro World booking again.
Bizarro!
FTR come out for an in-ring promo, and they call out Mark Briscoe because they want to apologize to him, because part of this, the unfolding of this program has been on their Friday show that nobody watches and whatever, but Jay Lethal is presented as a friend of Mark Briscoe's, even though FTR, like Mark, they're expected to put up with Jay, but Papa Briscoe don't trust Jeff and Sanjay and blah, and all this shit. And they've done some comedy videos, which didn't help understanding this confusing situation anymore. But nevertheless, they call out Mark Briscoe to apologize, but Jeff and Zippy and Sanjay and Lethal come out, and Sanjay's the one doing the talking, the one that should never be near a microphone. Because it's so silly. And you've got Lethal, who's believable. You got Jeff, we've got Sanjay talking. And now apparently there's been a challenge at Double or Nothing for Lethal and Jarrett to face FTR, and Dax asked the fans if they should accept the challenge, and the fans said, no, we don't want to see that. Did you catch that?
Yep.
How many, you always hear the babyface, should I do it? They go, yes, it is. Should we take the challenge? No, we don't want to see it. And whatever Dax called Jeff, they completely bleeped that out. And then FTR said that they would agree to wrestle these guys if they admit to using Mark Briscoe. And before anybody could do anything, Mark came out and got a big pop. Even though he's never on TV, and they've dropped the ball again with something that was handed to them on a silver platter. And he announces the most popular fucking guy right now in the ring, Mark Briscoe. People would do anything for him. He announces that at the Double or Nothing tag match, he'll be the referee. So they're making Mark Briscoe a referee in a... I said FTR ought to wrestle Jeff and Lethal because at least it'll be a good tag team match. I don't know if it's going to draw any money, but at least it won't be insulting. But Mark Briscoe now, in an attempt for Tony Khan to, in his mind, reconcile this and make somehow to him make this interesting, rather than just having FTR, who have been damaged in the booking, have just signed a new contract. Probably the best tag team match they could have in the company right now would be with Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett, unless if Mike Bennett and Matt Taven are still around. They said they signed them. We've never seen them again. Let FTR have a good match and win. It doesn't need all this goddamn gaga around it. Now you got Mark Briscoe being a fucking... I bet they switch Mark heel. Watch and see. The only possible way that they could fuck this up anymore is if they try to make him a fucking heel and side with Jay. And then Mark gives them all a bottle of booze and cups to toast. And Sanjay takes a big drink and spits right in fucking Dax's face. And they attack the heels, or they attack the baby faces. And Mark is trying to separate everybody and is left standing there like a dipshit. And then he gets shoved and falls into a blind pile driver by Dax, who can't see because of the booze in his eyes. But when he grabs the guy, he can give him a perfect pile driver. So help me.
I don't know how I can help you. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Is someone supposed to pretend that any of this is good? Because it's not. You know, FTR have had spectacular matches. Last year was their year. But the angles have always been missing. And this was, childish isn't even the word. The whole idea, we're going to prove that you're using Mark Briscoe. This whole thing has been poorly laid out. Nobody wants to see Sanjay, except Tony and Sanjay. It's coincidentally enough, QT and Sanjay can't get off this show, and both of them, according to The Observer, are Tony's right-hand guys in that company.
No, wait a minute. Only one of them could be the right hand. The other one's the left hand, but Tony's ambidextrous, so they get the same amount of fucking conditioner.
FTR are now in another feud that's not serious, that no one can take serious. Whatever benefits you want to say there are to Jeff Jarrett, using him like this aren't any of them. Jay Lethal's an afterthought. The Giant is an afterthought. Mark Briscoe could have been doing so much more. They're completely not using him correctly. And FTR, I mean, I just think they're losing ground. There has to be, you say only Taven and Bennett, put together another tag team. There has to be something else. It's almost like they decided, let's book something that Jim Cornette will like. Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal versus FTR. What else would Jim Cornette love more than this? And then let's just fill it with the worst actual week-to-week booking and see if we can get him to not like any of this. But this is bad. I mean, is there anything good about any of this?
No. It's just all over the place. And they
didn't know Sanjay was going to spit the liquor in his face? This is like...
Well, it makes Mark look like an idiot because he not only is humoring these people, but also that he's the one that brought the stuff in for the heels to fucking sabotage FTR with. It doesn't create intrigue on whose side is the referee going to be on. It makes people go, well, that fucking Mark Briscoe, he's an idiot too.
Now, this is horrible. No one wants to see FTR against these guys anymore. They just want to see them do something interesting, and this is not it. Not at all.
Hopefully, the next segment will be more interesting. Oh, wait. It's in the back. Chris Jericho mouthing off to Renee Moxley Good. And I was hoping that she wouldn't mentally assault him. He's had a bad week.
Have we determined what he meant? For those of you new to the show, previously on the Drive-Thru, we talked about Chris Jericho alleging that someone at the Mandalay Bay physically and mentally assaulted him.
Not even someone, but the staff.
The staff.
The Mandalay Bay staff. He couldn't get his car or his bags on time, and they physically and mentally assaulted him and then laughed in his face, is what he said.
But the question goes to, what is the mental assault? Could that be as simple as staring at him and not saying anything? They're using their mental ability? Like, what is the mental assault?
Or maybe it could be that they fucking made him watch one of his recent matches, and it was just more than he could handle. So the story here is that since Adam Cole attacked him last week and tackled him off the announce platform, and Adam Cole's crazy now, he's scared of Adam Cole, so Chris Jericho got a court order that if he's in a place, if he's in an arena, if he's wherever, Adam Cole is not allowed inside the building.
And by the way, I want to know what courthouse he went to that has the official AEW logo on their paperwork.
Yeah, on the paperwork, and also how he got it that quick. And if that's the case, then why is he going to, if he's got a lawyer that's on the ball like that, why is he going to Twitter to plead his case against Mandalay Bay? He could have got an injunction there too. But anyway, here comes Roderick Strong, walks in the picture. He's not banned, he says. I'm not banned, and Adam Cole's a friend of mine and has been for a long time, and I challenge you, Chris Jericho, next week to a Falls Count Anywhere match.
Their first match, by the way.
Not only their first match, Roderick Strong has had the sum total of one 8-man tag team match in this company and did not win that, was not the person that scored the pin, and now he's coming in, getting in Chris Jericho's face, challenging him to a match. It's their very first match, and already it's got to be Falls Count Anywhere. Roderick Strong has never even won yet in this company.
And he's known for his in-ring work. He's not really known for his brawling or anything.
Exactly. He said, I don't want just a match, I want to fight. Completely unlike every other match I've ever had in my career. So the best wrestler they've just recently signed, people are mooning and fucking cooing about, switch hitter Jay White and fucking Juice Robinson or whatever. Roderick Strong's the best in-ring wrestler they've signed in months, and they want him in a Falls Count Anywhere match with no DQ, lazy booking. And Jericho accepts that, but then Roderick Strong reveals that he has got a surprise too, that he got an injunction, and all of the Jericho appreciators are banned from the building as well. Every single one of them, 4 or 5 of them.
Looked like he was from the same Xerox machine as Jericho's paperwork.
Yes, from direct from Megan's fucking legal portfolio. So now, basically, again, this is ridiculous. It's 6 weeks worth of shit in a 30-second backstage pre-tape. And now Jericho's gotten an injunction that Adam Cole can't be anywhere near him. But Roderick Strong, who's never even had a single match yet in this company, wants to face Chris Jericho, and Jericho accepts for a Falls Count Anywhere. But, oh, by the way, those 5 guys that you got running around with you, fuck, they're banned too. I got that. Who's this attorney? Is he working both sides against the middle?
Did you notice Renee during this? I mean, I know Jericho and her were kind of going back and forth a little bit, but for a commentator, one that's supposed to be impartial, let alone one married to one of the top heels in the company, she was really hamming it up. I thought too much with her facial expressions, like digging what Roddy was saying, obviously against the dastardly Chris Jericho, but
yeah,
it was too much. It was over the top.
Well, everybody's got to be a thespian or a thespian or whatever. And what do you want to bet now? Okay, everybody's banned from the building. Falls Count Anywhere. They're going to fight out of the building, and then everybody that's banned is going to be out in the parking lot and just jump them anyway. All right. And then Renee Moxley Good was at Tony Khan's office, and Thunder Rosa showed up and went inside.
How quick did she get from that interview set to Tony Khan's office without being out of breath?
Well, there was a break, but she's a marathon runner. And then
any thoughts on Thunder Rosa returning?
No. It's fine. She's fine, but she did nothing here. She walked up and went inside Tony Khan's office.
Well, we talked about it a little earlier with Miro. What are your thoughts on them teasing the idea that, again, people who haven't been there in a while are coming back? We know that there's a big announcement next week that we'll discuss shortly, but any thoughts on this being the way they're teasing former stars of this show returning?
Well, obviously nobody particularly cared. I mean, Miro was nice. He got a pop. It would have been nice if we'd have seen more of him. And they're just setting this up, but they're not going to have Punk show up next week and walk in goddamn Tony's office and close the door. So all they're doing right now, as Mama Cornette used to say, when you would get really good food, but it was a small portion, or a really good TV show, but you just catch the end of it, or anything you really wanted or you really liked, but you just got just a soup son, she said, it's just enough to piss you off. Right now, they're giving people just enough to piss them off. They know who people want to return, and it ain't fucking Rosa and Miro right now.
I don't know. I think a lot of people want Miro. I mean, I'm not saying it takes away from Punk,
well, I mean,
and that's going to be a big deal, but Miro's one of the guys they really could have used on this roster for the last year.
Anyway, another 4-pillar video. Sammy gets a video. He never got a dinner, but he got a video. The old roast, Dean Martin's roast, if you remember that one. Anyway, so this video mainly consisted of him jumping off shit and taking stupid bumps, but help me, Brian, Sammy's a heel, right? Sammy's the guy that a couple weeks ago was going to take the payoff from MJF, and Sammy is a smartass with a bitchy girlfriend that goes out and they try to get heat from the people, right?
Who have been presented, from the little bit I've seen and from what I've heard, as baby faces on their reality show. Just kids struggling to figure things out in the world of wrestling. But I've said it before. Every Sammy promo, he's both babyface and heel in the same promo.
Because here he was pretty much completely babyface. He was giving kids advice to go for their dreams. Instead of saying, I'm a fucking star and I got hotter pussy than all of you and I'm going to be the world champion because I'm the greatest and fuck all of you. He's like, kids, if you just keep trying, you can go for your dream. Anything's possible. So anyway, then Tony Khan was in front of his announcement background where he announced that he's going to have an announcement next week. Let the supposition run wild.
What are your thoughts on him announcing an announcement?
Well, I think, it's good because he's got the announcement background now with the TBS logo and everything. That looks pretty slick. And, he's got to make sure that people hear the announcement of the announcement that he's going to make so that they will hear it when he makes the announcement. So I think he should have announced it.
Do you think he's getting too into being on TV?
Probably. But at least he's pre-taping shit now. And he's not coming out straight from the gorilla position when he's frazzled and his fucking hair's all...
But that's the thing, too. It looks so fake because of that. Like, even if you can get past Renee Moxley Good teleporting backstage from one location to another, they're showing all this backstage stuff, people walking into his office. Next thing you know, he's like on a fucking soundstage, doing his announcement without blinking. So, I mean, I know they want to tape it and make sure he does it right, but there has to be a way to naturally incorporate that into the show.
I don't know, but the announcement next week, people wonder, will it be the new Saturday night program? Will it be the return of Punk? Will it be both? I would think they could stretch that, and they could certainly get more mileage out of announcing the new Saturday night program first and then leading to that business with Punk, if they indeed have it smoothed over, and if there's nothing in the next, what's that show debut, a little over a month, if there's nothing in the next month that the EVPs can do to sabotage whatever's going on.
It ain't just them.
Well, I mean, all of their minions. They have long tentacles that reach to every corner of the company. It's the only thing on them that's long.
A lot of people think the announcement beyond the Saturday show, and if they do announce Punk, I'll be surprised, just because people are going to know Punk's going to be at the show they've now entitled The Second Coming in Chicago. People are going to figure that out just like they did the first time. But if the announcement is, in fact, again, Wednesday is the upfronts, a new multi-year contract with AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery, we assume hundreds of millions of dollars, another at least hour or 2 hours of programming on TBS. If that's the announcement, what do you think of that? And what do you think of the crazy rumor that started on the Observer board this week of it being $1 billion deal?
Okay, wait, hold on now. First, press pause on that last one. You know what would tickle me? It would shickle me titless. If Punk is indeed instrumental in this deal and getting the second show from Warner Brothers Discovery, and as we were led to believe with leaks and stories floating around, and they announce the new show and they've got that building in Chicago booked and they call it The Second Coming and everybody buys those tickets. If any of the EVPs or their friends or their stooges or their family members were to fart in Punk's general direction and piss him off at that point, can you imagine what Tony Khan would have if he ended up with a sold-out United Center, debut of a live television program, again, that came to see one thing, and Punk just wasn't there? When he rolls the dice, he being Tony, when he rolls the dice on all this and makes all these announcements and he's made these deals with the network and whatever, he better make sure that those little fucking cretinous little crumb snatchers that leech off of him don't do the same thing they've been doing repeatedly over and over, because that could lead to his goddamn Waterloo. Oh, sorry, I got a case of whooping belch. Ain't gonna be there, Tony. Anyway, speaking of not being there, the next match on the program was Pockets versus Daniel Garcia. I root for long Pockets matches now because it's more of this stinker that I can skip. And this was at least 15 minutes. Then,
the problem's going to be when Tony does him and MJF. Because there's no doubt in my mind that's what Tony wants.
I would think at that point that's where MJF has to put his foot down and say, I'm an attraction for you, and more importantly, I'm a commodity in this business, and you're not doing that to me, or to us, or to your own company. I will not let you commit this self-inflicted wound, you fucking idiot. Hopefully, MJF.
Hopefully, he doesn't do it in Wembley. Hopefully, he doesn't do it in Wembley.
Anyway, they went from a complete joke segment, Pockets and whoever, to the best segment of the program. Christian Cage in the ring with his mute stooge Dino douche. I like him when he just stands there and doesn't say anything. And Tony Schiavone interviewing him. And even though, once again, every once in a while, Christian has to tell the interviewer to hold the goddamn microphone up in the right place in his little subtle way, gives it the elbow, the little boom. Christian, what a heel, what a promo, professional, delivery, material, tons of heat from the fans, the demeanor, the facial expressions. I could sit there and listen to him do heel promos all fucking night. And actually, it's even more refreshing right now than MJF's because it's so long since we've really had a chance to hear a lot from Christian that it's even fresher. But again, he did a great promo and ran down Arn Anderson as a flunky horseman, said Wardlow had daddy issues like Jungle Boy. And basically, you know, if he's healthy, Christian, if he's healthy and is not injured and can wrestle, here's you a goddamn top heel, for fuck's sake. But we haven't seen a lot of him either. But every time they put the microphone in front of him, this was the best segment on the fucking program to me, because it's the only one that actually made sense, was professionally done, and has a chance of building the future interest in business. Your thoughts?
I thought it was pretty good. The crowd was really part of the story, just how over the top they were. Someone told me they were chanting Edge was better at Christian at various points.
When they weren't chanting shut the fuck up.
I think Christian, you know, I can't see him as a top heel. And part of the reason is he does like one amazing promo every 7 months. And then everything in between, I don't know.
But we don't even see him most of the time during that 7 months. He's had one match in,
remember when
I don't know how long he was injured, his arm, yes, but now he's saying he's going to wrestle this match with Wardlow or whatever. I don't know what's going on.
But the Jungle Boy stuff started with Christian doing a couple of weeks with the turtleneck for the first time. Amazing promos. And then that quickly got tiresome. Great promo here. It would be a good promo without the crowd. It was a great promo with the crowd. We'll see where they go with this. I don't know. You know, again, I always, whether it's Christian or Edge or CM Punk, any of these guys that return after a long time off and they're in their 40s, I'm always wary about how much you're going to get out of them before they get hurt again. Not that you can't use them still on the show when they're hurt, but I don't know about in the ring, especially Christian, because we've seen it now a few times. How many times has he been hurt in AEW? 2 or 3 times?
Well, that may not all be his fault now. You know what they do over there, but I don't care if they've got to wheel Christian Cage out in an iron lung. I'd take him over 90% of the roster here. But another pillar package. And this was for Darby Allin. And of course, he was skateboarding and jumping shit. And did you hear the voiceover that he did when his comments while they were showing him doing all this various stuff? He does this various crazy stuff. And this is a quote: to break down mental barriers in his head and make him understand he's capable of more than people told him he was. So he's risking his life, limb, neck, jumping over shit, doing horrible damage to his body to make himself understand that he's capable of more than people told him he was. Couldn't he have just not listened to him? Couldn't he have just said, you know what? I don't really agree with those people. I think I'm capable of a lot more than that. Did he have to break every bone in his body to convince himself of that? That's my question.
Well, then one of the pillars would be a boring accountant or something. This is who Darby is.
Well, that's why I wrote he's weird but likable. But yeah, that's the thing. I can't understand his thinking, but I understand that he does have a weird, unique charisma. And again, a missed opportunity that this is not a single match with all the positive focus on MJF or Darby and all the negative focus on MJF. Good guy, bad guy. Anyway, then, speaking of, we went from good and bad to now indifferent. A no disqualification, no count out, anything goes match, no holds barred, and I'm on the edge of my seat, and then they say, Anna Jay versus Julia Hart. Did they say no holds barred or no hose barred? I'm trying to... Who was calling for a no disqualification, anything goes match with weapons with Anna Jay and Julia Hart?
They were.
And,
Remember the last time the women's hardcore tag team match was on the show is because they specifically asked Tony for it and they wanted it, and Tony said yes.
well, Anna Jay glommed Julia Hart from behind while she was on her way to the ring. During the entrance, hit her from behind with a chair, and then when she had hit her opponent from the back with a chair and she was down at her feet, she left her opponent, walked 100 feet away, and got a garbage can. And they were on the floor, and they had kendo sticks, and the crowd chanted, "We want tables," because the furniture is more over than the talent. And I wrote, they've sent two green, inexperienced girls that are not particularly smart to what the business is and probably aren't ready to wrestle on national TV out there to do an indie garbage match and just make everything meaningless. And the finish was Julia Hart superplexing Anna Jay off the top rope onto chairs that were laid out in the middle of the ring, but they came up short and missed the chairs completely. So when Anna Jay realized that she didn't land on any chairs, did you see she rolled over on her knees and looked and scrambled over onto the top of the chairs as quickly as she could, like nobody would have noticed? 1, 2, 3. Any further comments on that contest?
A few things. One, this was the 9 o'clock hour. This is where they went to for 9 o'clock. We saw that disastrous Britt Baker Anna Jay house show match. Anna Jay has a great look, but I think you shouldn't have people. Part of the problem is if you can't work a regular match, you shouldn't have them working the no DQ falls count anywhere, no holds barred match.
Right.
We've never seen them work a regular match. This is the first time we've seen them. Apparently, they've been having a feud somewhere that's really big and hot and heavy. It's just we have no idea about it if we watch the show.
This is the first time Julia Hart's ever wrestled on the Wednesday night program. And now she's in a protected group. And she has a great look. And remember, I said she's got a great look. Don't let her wrestle and spoil it.
And that's the problem. They probably thought that if we let her go out there and actually wrestle and work a match, it's going to be a problem. It has to be a hardcore match because then we can hide all the weaknesses. And, you know, Anna Jay, great look. If she's willing to take these bumps, because she got her ass kicked in that last tag team hardcore match they had. Remember, she got concussed or whatever it was, hurt her tailbone. I forget what it was. She's willing to take these bumps. Either make her, I hate to say Jungle Boy because they're in a real relationship, but make her someone's fucking manager and let her take those bumps off the apron, but not as a wrestler, because it'll mean more. But instead, it was just kind of like, we can do it too. And that's what this was at the 9 o'clock hour. And again, you know, Roddy versus Jericho next week goes right to, I don't even remember. It's either no DQ or falls count anywhere, whatever it is.
Yeah, falls count anywhere.
First time we've seen them wrestle. This is the first time we've seen these two wrestle. Same thing.
Well, but speaking of rules, the House of Black was up next. Or should I say the House of Blech? Blecka. So now
Did you say Blaka?
Blecka. Young Frankenstein.
Blaka, okay.
Blecka. Frau Blecka. Anyway, the House of Blecka are the 6-man champions now. And they've got their own rules that they have just decided to use. And nobody can stop them, apparently. It's a 20 count on the outside, not a 10 count. Of course, it's 5 minutes in every AEW match anyway. So that really, we're not going to notice anything. Any 3 people can form a trio to challenge them, which already happens. There are no rope breaks in the match because they don't want people to puss out. Okay. You can be disqualified. So it's basically a regular match in AEW always has no disqualification whatsoever. So this is a special one because you can be disqualified. And the last rule is dealer's choice, where the challengers get to pick a rule. So they have the House of Blech against Muffin Top and Cupcake, the Puddin' Gang, and Bandito. And now they also have special lighting for this shit, where it's darker and spookier for the House of Black's match. And I can't seriously watch this because it's the Puddin' Gang. But the House of Black apparently won fairly easily. But then as soon as the match was over, they went to a shot in the back at the monitor, and there was our little puppy Pockets, who had been watching his friends, the Puddin' Gang, is down on the floor selling. And a guy's standing over him, and he's got two belts. I think one of Pockets is, and then, I don't know, maybe he's got a belt too. Everybody else does. And the announcers say, "Who's that?" "Why, it's Kyle Fletcher." And then in runs Arnold Finster and Frank Forget About It. And so while they're doing a gimmick match in the ring, they're having some guy that's in Aussie Oldham, the tag team, that's not related to any of this shit, beating up the fucking guy that's watching the match on the monitor in the back. And nobody knew who the fuck he was when you looked at him, because he's been on TV, 3 times?
In a tag team.
And the last time was in a tag team battle royal. They didn't even announce him.
Well, now we get to see him in Pockets, which is exactly what no one was demanding.
Good Lord.
What did you think of and I'm going to be curious how much longer they go with this. What did you think of the look for the House of Black match? The idea of turning out the lights, but having the video screens on and having just static images or various different things on there to light up the room.
Well, that's, again, you can't polish a turd. If there was anything interesting or that was going to draw any money about the House of Black or Revolutionary or whatever, that'd be great to do special lighting treatments and etc. for them. But it's the fucking House of Black with goofy Mark 6-man tag rules against people that nobody gives a shit. So we'll see how long that lasts. Did you like Jungle Jack's package?
Talking to me or Anna J?
I'm talking to you. Jungle Jack's package, probably a lot smaller than MJF's, but still I've figured it might be entertaining, and then I found out why. Apparently, ladies and gentlemen, Jungle Boy Jack Perry started training, this is from his own mouth, from his own lips, started training to be a pro wrestler when he was 9 or 10. And he actually said, "My parents found me a place to train," and they showed pictures of him as a child in a ring in somebody's backyard with a bunch of goofs in t-shirts. He really legitimately did train in a backyard with nobodies. All the thing we've been saying, it's like that he was never trained. It's like that he just started practicing this shit on his own. We were right. He was a kid playing wrestler, trained by a nobody in some guy's back. He even called him some guy in some guy's backyard.
I know who it was. Wasn't it Rick Drayson?
I don't know who the fuck it was. But anybody taking money to train a 10-year-old kid should be on a registry somewhere. Any professional wrestling training program that would accept a 10-year-old kid, unless it's being run by the kid's father, should be reported somewhere. And he was a kid playing wrestler and in a ring in the backyard. And you know that once whoever found out that his father was a TV star, the price went up, and it was like, "Oh yeah, let me do this." And so they were indulging the kid, and it's like if I wanted to pretend to be one of the fucking U of L Cardinals out in my driveway shooting baskets at my goal. That's what he was doing, but he never broke out of that. He broke in with the people that were playing wrestler, by the people that were playing wrestler. And that's continued to be who he is. He doesn't understand anything else. So it makes sense now. He has the...
We don't train kids. My dad's on 90210. Well, when do you want to start?
Yeah. And I hope you carry your bag in. Jungle Boy has the most superficial understanding of the wrestling business of all 4 of them. And this is why, in my opinion. And then we get to the main event that everybody wanted to talk about. I'll talk about this, and I may have to go relieve myself because it's going to give me gas again. Their big pay-per-view main event on this pay-per-view card, a cage match Old Twinkle Toes himself, Kenny Olivier, against Plumber Moxley. And they promoted this one and beat it to death. And for the AEW fan, for the kind of people who like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing those people like. And I will say this briefly. I'm not going to try to talk about really any story they told or what they did in this fucking match. As far as having a match, I'm going to give you the high points of the ridiculousness of it. But let me make this clear. I can understand, and I've said this on the program, and when we talked about the match he had in Japan recently, I can understand a bit of the appeal of Kenny. Overlook his past actions with children and sex toys. Don't care that he's a mush-mouthed douchebag nerd. If you can get past his funny faces, gesticulating and prancing, if you can pay no heed to the rotten booking that he's always involved in, if you can let it matter not that you never really know if he's a babyface or a heel because he does the same shit regardless, and if you can be unfazed by his boring personality and lack of ever really being believably angry or violent, he's athletic, and his presentation in Japan, where they like the guy jeans anyway, makes him look a lot better than he is, and I can understand that appeal. And if you like video game wrestling matches, I can see where you could tolerate this fucking guy. But explain to me Moxley. He looks like an outlaw mud show piece of shit. He acts like an outlaw mud show piece of shit, and just like his hero and boyfriend, the bank-addicted drug robber, all he's ever going to be is an outlaw mud show piece of shit. And is this some type of, I don't know, mass hysteria? Like when Vince managed to convince people for a couple of years that the Ultimate Warrior was worth a shit? That everybody's just blind? It's some kind of hysteria?
I told you what it was. It's a true cult of personality. CM Punk comes out to the song, but it's a real thing. It's a concept beyond the song. That's what we have with Moxley and the AEW fans.
Why would anybody want to be around this guy's personality?
That I couldn't tell you, but that's what it is.
I mean, you know, the fucking former football players they do on Family Guy with, well, you know, coming up over the far turn there, you know, like that. He's a fucking mental case. He's got chronic concussion, whatever. So anyway, they start this match. The first action that you see, because Moxley leaves the cage and jumps Kenny on the floor, and the first action you see is Kenny throwing the fakest, weakest, girliest punches at Moxley, not even connecting. They're just swinging their arms and hands. They're not throwing anything at anybody. It's just meaningless motion.
Can I jump in here?
Please.
Because I don't have as big a problem with Omega as you do, and you know where I stand on Moxley, but you're being almost too nice about not just Omega, but both of their punches, but Omega's were towards the camera, so you get to see what they were. I mean,
yeah,
they were just whiffs. I mean, it wasn't even like, I'm going to try to make this look good. I'm just going to swing. It looked really fake to me.
That's what they're doing. That's what, because they're too busy trying to concentrate on Moxley wants to bleed and be violent, and Doofus wants to be a video game character. So they can't be bothered to do shit that actually looks good, which is my problem with both of them. The fucking guy can dive off the roof and do triple flips, can't throw a fucking punch. So I made notes. Sloppy brawling. Claudio and Useless come out, and they jump fucking who's-he, what's-he. And then here comes the Hardley Boys with super kicks. They throw Useless off the stage, and then Claudio throws Maddie off the stage, and then Nikki dives off the stage. The match has been forgotten. We don't even see where the cage is or where the people are. And I wrote morbid curiosity. I can't skip this. I've got to see how bad it is. So security broke up the fights outside. They get in the cage, and they do a fake 1-2 that nobody sells. Then they stand there and trade chops on purpose.
The 1-2 got me, because Moxley does that in every one of his matches. Here these guys are, apparently they hate each other. Both of their cliques are fighting at ringside. The stupidest part with the stage, with the dive off the stage, whatever. They get in there after all this, now let's trade back and forth. But it's not just let's trade. I'm going to hit you. Now I'm going to stand here, take a breath, and stick my chest out. If you watch it and actually time it, it was ridiculous. It was just, I'm going to feed you. Why? What is the point of that? Is it, I'm a badass so you can hit me? Like, what is the point in doing that? He does it in every match. He did it here after jump starting it.
And then Kenny threw some more fake punches that Moxley doesn't sell. He doesn't even register when somebody punches him. He just throws it back. It's so phony. And then Kenny did some flips. And then he pulled a barbed wire wrapped chair from between the ring and the cage and pulled it in. And now they're using Kenny hits the plumber in the back with the barbed wire chair, then stomps on it. And so now dipshit, not only the plumber, his back is bleeding and his head is bleeding. And I wrote, why not put Ian Rotten on national television and give all the fans free hepatitis? This is for the lowest common denominator. This is garbage television for stupid people. And it's so embarrassing.
I think it's
that they call this pro wrestling, and the only alternative to this is Vince's Fairyland. So you either got to look at wrestling for 5-year-olds or garbage wrestling for convicted felons. There's no in between.
And again, I said it at the top, the commentating on this match was so atrocious. Until they acknowledge and recognize how counterproductive Excalibur and Shivani are together, this show is just so hard to not put mute on. They're horrible.
I don't know if this is actual, real, legitimate 4-prong barbed wire. I don't know if they're getting 2-prong. I don't know if they're clipping some of them. They were definitely cutting their back up. Moxley cut his own head, big news. He does that on live television constantly. But it wasn't like anybody that's ever worked with any kind of barbed wire, if they'd have done with real barbed wire, unaltered barbed wire in some fashion, what they did here, their skin would have been hanging in shreds. But they were still cutting themselves up, so they're taking some step to mitigate it. But it's still stupid, and this still looks believable as barbed wire, which makes both of them complete idiots. And why would you want to see this? Because they're not doing a good enough job of making you convinced they're really fighting. They're obviously cooperating, but they're still getting hurt. And that's the stupidest thing I can think of. So
it's dope.
Anyway, they unscrewed the top turnbuckle. The top rope was down, and Moxley had the hook in Kenny's mouth. And again, with Mr. Badass Plumber Moxley, I would love to see Moxley just go up nose to chest and have that badass look in a real situation in a bar somewhere with Steve Williams. And just in their, if we had a time machine and they could in their respective primes when we still had Doc with us. And I think, in my opinion, that Plumber Moxley, if he was on the wrong side of Steve Dr. Death Williams in a real situation, would do one of two things. He'd either be hospitalized in 25 seconds, or Dr. Death would have made an appetizer out of him and eaten him in about 15. So, anyway, then they got tied up in the rope, and then Moxley goes and pulls out a bag, and it's broken glass. And that's where I wrote, could someone send him to mental rehab now that we got the alcohol rehab out of the way, so they can see what this fucking major malfunction is in his brain pan. And then he took a bump in his own glass. And as he took the bump in the glass, he sells it for like 5 seconds and then grabs a sleeper on Kenny. And at that's the point I said, this is too ridiculous. There's 8 minutes left on the air. I'm fast forwarding. So I fast forwarded to the point where Kenny hits him with his little Canterbury knee, and this time they'd gimmicked the cage. They went through the cage to the floor, and that looked pretty good because Kenny almost broke his fucking leg when he got hung across the thing, so it looked like it really hurt people, because it probably did.
When you say got hung across the thing, Kenny hits the knee on Moxley, but when Moxley goes through the cage, Kenny goes with him, but his leg is in between the cage and the ring, stuck there. I mean, he's lucky he didn't tear everything right there.
Yeah, and he crotched himself on the metal cross beam of the cage while he stuck his right leg in between the cage and the ring, so he could have broken the leg. Thank God when he fucking landed crotch first on that railing, there's nothing in that part of his body to fucking injure. So then Moxley gets a screwdriver and he's going to stab Kenny in the face. But that's where Don Fallis comes in. And he grabs the screwdriver away from Moxley and then, bails out to the corner or something where...
In a cartoony way.
In a very cartoony way to call attention to... It wasn't like I'm a pussy begging for my life. It's like I'm showing you that I'm acting. And then Kenny... Now that Moxley's been relieved of the screwdriver, Kenny grabs the plumber and hits the one-winged fairy on him and covers him. And Fallis comes back from behind and stabs. And I'm talking a big stabbing motion. He's got a fucking screwdriver, whether it's a flathead or a Phillips. If you stabbed someone in the top of the head as hard as he worked that he did... Point is, Kenny sells his head, but he wasn't bleeding right away. And Moxley crawled over and covered him 1, 2, 3. And then they keep the camera off Kenny forever while everybody's going, why would Don do this? Why would he do such a thing? And it's a close-up of Don. And finally, about 2 minutes later, when they felt like he'd accomplished it, Don goes back over and stands over him, and Kenny looks up, and he's got a pap smear. Possibly a busted pimple. This fucking pussy, in the main event of this big cage match in this hardcore wrestling promotion, is supposed to get juice by being stabbed in the head with a screwdriver. And he's so scared of doing it, he gets a pap smear for a fucking screwdriver stabbing. Why do it?
Couldn't be a situation like Luger in 88 in Baltimore where you're supposed to get it, but for whatever reason, it doesn't happen?
You know what the reason was?
What was the reason?
He'd almost never done it. He was scared to fuck of doing it.
So it was just like that.
That's what happened. And that's what happened. So then Don goes to stab him again while all the male referees are standing around. This is not Brock Lesnar. This is not Andre the Giant. This is Don Fallis, the manager, and he's going to stab the guy in the head with a screwdriver, and the male referees are all standing around same size as him. No, please don't do that. But then Don decides not to, throws the screwdriver down, grabs Kenny, and kisses him on the face, and says something to him, and leaves the ring.
Did you hear Excalibur? I mean, it was so bad. I almost wish I had the exact words in front of me. It was, he's practically family. He's literally family. Well, I mean, he's basically a son. He couldn't figure out what to say to describe this stupid relationship. So he just said every single family relationship someone could have, he associated to these two guys.
Well, this was one of the worst televised matches that I've ever seen from any wrestling promotion ever, and I guarantee you that the fucking AEW fans couldn't have loved anything more if you'd have wrapped it up in a fucking bow and given it to them with a brand new car.
You're right about that.
And that's...
AEW fans loved it.
And that is where the problem is, because you're not going to get anybody but the small amount of people that like this kind of fucking hokey-ass bullshit to watch this hokey-ass bullshit. But if they don't ever try to do something more professional and something that doesn't make wrestling all look like the goddamn guy that bites the fucking heads off the live chickens at the county fair, then this is all they're ever going to fucking do. Can Punk even save this?
You know, again, not taking away what you think about Omega, I didn't have a problem with Omega here, and I thought Omega, to his credit, has been taking things a little more seriously in terms of how they've been doing it. You notice they didn't do the whole North Carolina introduction for him. It was just...
Well, he was throwing fake punches, and his work looks like shit, but at least they didn't, comedy it up even worse.
I don't expect his punches to suddenly get good, so, I mean, that doesn't surprise me, but at least his promos haven't been as silly, and they gave him a regular introduction. He's had a cartoon manager who's only there because of who his friends are. there's been a tease for a while about this breakup. The stuff with Don Callis and Takeshita, Don Callis getting cut, Blackpool Combat Club saying you have to bleed with us to join us. So this has been teased for a while. But again, this isn't like Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart or Jim Cornette or Gary Hart or some big, long-established heel manager that was all of a sudden with the babyface because the heel turned babyface, and then he turned on him. To me, this isn't that at all. They've tried to make Phallus and Omega a thing. Omega's a thing. Callis is just there with him because, again, who his friends are. But the Moxley matches are terrible. Now you got Don Callis in the middle of this. Do you think they're going to propel this to Wembley, or are they going to tie this all together sooner?
I couldn't possibly give a shit. Again, Kenny, for the kind of people who like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing those people like. I can't see what anybody sees in this fucking Moxley, from the visual to the work to the attitude that he has toward the business, to the fact that he acts like this and refuses to use his status to teach younger guys the good and bad habits. Instead, he teaches them all the bad and none of the good. He's a bad influence on anybody that wants to be a wrestler because they might think that they should do some of this bullshit too.
That's the thing about Moxley. For the people, because we hear from people every now and then, they're like, you got to watch his stuff. He's hard hitting. He's this and that. His stuff looks bad. Everything he does in the ring that he thinks makes himself look like a badass looks horrible. His punches look like shit. The elbows look like shit. The forearms look like shit. Everything he does looks bad. So if you're ignoring all that to say his matches are good.
And plus, it's constant bad wrestling and bad taste in wrestling. And he encourages the whole garbage deathmatch bullshit. He encourages younger guys to fucking do this outlaw indie shit that's going to limit their career and limit their potential and limit their choices. I'm not just talking about getting hurt and limiting your career. I'm talking about the WWE sees people, and if they see you doing that shit, they're going to fucking roll their eyes and move on with the barbed wire and the broken glass and the bullshit. They may take it from some guy that's established somehow, and they can say, well, he just doesn't have to do that. We can still use him, but they're not going to take rookies into their training program when they're most noted for rolling around in broken glass.
And one more thing on Omega here. And again, I know you disagree with a lot of the stuff on Omega, but it hits me watching this. I mean, Kenny Omega's a guy that from the beginning of AEW has been presented by AEW as a main eventer. Not always booked like one, but they present him like one. To me, he's so much more valuable as a singles wrestler than in trios matches or anything else. Like, we don't get to just see singles matches. That's really, if you're a Kenny Omega fan, isn't that what you want?
Well, one would think, but I was figuring Kenny's been injured so many times, they just want to, and the Buckaroos, they just want to have belts and play with their friends, so that they were trying to hide Kenny's injuries in the six-mans. But he seemed to be moving around just fine when Moxley had a goddamn turnbuckle hook in his fucking jaw.
That was the same hook that ripped apart the arm of Cash Wheeler on TV.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure they've changed the hook.
Well, you know what I mean. It did nothing to Omega. It was in his mouth against his cheek.
Well, what's he supposed to do? Blade his fucking cheek open?
You don't
like
do the spot.
Glasgow smile?
You don't do the spot. That's what you do.
Well, exactly. Don't do the spot.
Well, that was AEW
anyway.
Dynamite.
All right, now I know the number. I've gotten a heads up on the numbers that, again, they're no better or worse than they usually are, but that people actually wanted to see this. Basically, two guys dropping down and taking a shit in the middle of the ring, so they did better at the end of the program. But what are the exact statistics this week?
This week's AEW Dynamite, May 10th on TBS, was watched by, on average, 877,000 viewers.
And over the past several weeks, it's been 860, 830, 830, 860, 860. So we're about in the range.
Well, the show opened up, and these were compiled by WrestleNomics. The show opened up 8 to 8:15 p.m., segment 1. Claudio Castagnoli versus Rey Fenix, with picture-in-picture, 866,000 viewers.
And again, we got to have somebody find out for us if the business The Big Bang Theory business, the bottom's dropping out of it because they were always over 1 million at the start. Now they're not even over 900 at the start. And that's the Big Bang.
Well, again,
what they're handing off.
A lot of things happening on TV right now, specifically with the NBA, so that may play a part of it. But segment 2, 8:15 to 8:30 p.m., Miro backstage, the MJF video, the Blackpool Combat Club and Elite video, FTR, Mark Briscoe, Jay Lethal, Jeff Jarrett, Sanjay Dutt, Satnam Singh's live angle, and Chris Jericho and Roddy Strong's backstage angle, 859,000 viewers.
So they only lost 7,000. That ain't as bad as normal. So every once in a while, it's 100,000.
Well, they started so much lower here, but segment 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m., Thunder Rosa showing up backstage, the Sammy Guevara video, Tony Khan's backstage announcement of a future announcement, and Orange Cassidy versus Daniel Garcia, 880,000 viewers.
Can you believe that? They got 21,000 back. Actually, more than back. They didn't have them to begin with.
I do believe that because I also think unless you knew the main event was on last, and if you wanted to see it, you'd probably start tuning in closer to 9 o'clock thinking it could be then.
Very true. Continue.
Segment 4, the continuation of Orange Cassidy versus Daniel Garcia with picture-in-picture, as well as an Outcast and Hikaru Shida video, and Christian Cage's promo, 878,000 viewers.
And they only lost 2, so they're flat again. So apparently in this particular week, everybody that started out with this program said, okay, we want to watch this tonight. They've given us the pay-per-view level lineup, so we're going to stick with it. This is the least variation they've had. They've been down 7 and up 14 from the start the whole fucking show through so far.
Segment 5, the 9 o'clock hour, 9 to 9:15 p.m., Darby Allin's video, as well as Anna Jay versus Julia Hart with picture-in-picture, Falls Count Anywhere or No Holds Barred. I think that's what it was.
Yes.
877,000 viewers.
So they only lost 1,000 more. If they didn't run them off with Anna Jay and Julia Hart, they ain't going anywhere.
Segment 6, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m., Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends promo, as well as the House of Black versus Bandito and the Best Friends with picture-in-picture, 842,000 viewers.
Ouch. Okay, I'm sorry. Anna Jay and Julia Hart didn't run them off, but Pockets did. There's 35,000. They just wanted to get away from him. They promised they'd come back.
Segment 7, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m., Kyle Fletcher is attacking Orange Cassidy backstage, Jack Perry's video, Ricky Starks' video, and the beginning of Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley, 880,000 viewers.
And son of a bitch, they came right back as soon as they got Pockets off the screen.
And finally, segment 8, 9:45 to 10 p.m., Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega in a cage with picture-in-picture, as well as the post-match angle with Don Callis, 937,000 viewers.
And that is amazing that they picked up another 57,000 people in the last segment that they never grow in, that they hemorrhage viewers in. And that, can you remember another AEW program where the last 15 minutes was the highest rated quarter in the whole program? I don't think there's ever been one.
I'm looking for it now. I don't know about highest rated quarter, but I think the last time I remember a rise, I got to check here, may have been the Kenny Omega versus El Hijo del Vikingo match. Which again goes into something about if Kenny Omega is the guy who at the very beginning of AEW, a lot of fans were pumped up to see, and then AEW, they made him the world champion, but you could argue about how well he's been booked or not booked.
Right.
People still want to see him as a single star, I think, more than they want to see every other way they've been using him. And again, there may be physical limitations because of his injuries. That
I think you're right, because think about it. The best of 7 series where people had to watch him and the Buckaroos and the Six Mans, they lost 6 figures of viewers at the end of every program. And every time he's in another one of these multi-person things with his little friends, it loses viewers. But then, of course, this was a cage match, but still, as a single, for whatever reason, people want to see this douchebag. So I have to admit that.
Hey, I found it right here. AEW Dynamite, March 22nd. The show opened, for the record, 1,016,000 viewers. That was Darby and Orange Cassidy and Sting versus the Butcher, the Blade, and Kip Sabian. But segment 3, which was The Factory video and Tony Storm versus Sky Blue, was 911. And then it went up to 965 and 969 for the final 2, which was Kenny Omega versus El Hijo del Vikingo. So not a huge rise, but certainly over segment 6, there was a rise.
Boy, I tell you what, if it had been my television program, I'd have like, Jesus Christ, almost 1 million people watched the last 15 minutes for the first time, and they have to see that. It was just, I don't care whether people watched it or not, it was embarrassing. And you may have liked it as a fan, but if you're in the wrestling business, again, I draw the analogy, does the star of the Metropolitan Opera get offended when they hear Milli Vanilli selling records? It's the shits. It's embarrassing. And I don't know that you should want to root for people to watch this kind of stuff, because then it makes people want to do more of this kind of shit. And then we're where we are today, because that's all they've done now for the past 20 years is do more of that shit.
Yeah, the problem is the Moxley stuff specifically. Tony lets him do anything he wants to do, and his ideas are really, really bad. Brock Lesnar experienced that years ago. Other people in that company may have experienced that too. Moxley has bad ideas that he's convinced are really good, and he wants to do them, and he only wants to do them. And to me, it's just as lame as it could be. It was just a manufactured group that he put together. He declared they were dope. They're feuding with the Elite. We really don't even know why. Danielson couldn't even comprehensively explain or coherently explain why last week. We're doing this because we want to make you better. And we want people to be better. And you're amateur. Where is this coming from?
It always improved me when somebody would correct me by stabbing me in the face with a screwdriver.
Not very good. But there people seem to like it, and that was AEW Dynamite.